Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. We ask the questions no one else will, and we get the answers that no one else can. I'm Arabina Apia, and we are coming to you once again from the beautiful Margaritaville Beach Resort in downtown Nassau. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Now, if you were one of the thousands of Bahamians who tuned in for the reopening of Parliament on Wednesday past, then you witnessed firsthand the usual levels of pomp and pageantry associated with an event of that kind. Aside from the spectacle, however, Bahamians were listening keenly to gain a sense of this administration's strategy for the next 3 years. The highly anticipated speech from the throne unveiled the Davis administration's updated roadmap for a transformed Bahamas. And as is to be expected, Bahamians everywhere have opinions, and lots of them. So the question now is, what is there to be gleaned from this speech, and what does it mean for you and I as the average everyday Bahamian? Truth be told, there is perhaps no better focus of a legislative reset than to increase opportunities and safeguards for the most vulnerable in our society. This looks like taking tangible steps to tackle crime. It looks like safeguards for children and the elderly, as well as the disabled. It looks like continued economic growth and development. And it also looks like a renewed focus and investment in the Family Islands as well. If you were listening intently, then you heard the Davis administration articulate plans to do exactly that. Last week, we began our coverage of the reopening of Parliament by tackling the concept of prorogation and the government's cabinet realignment, particularly following the passing of West End and Bimini Member of Parliament, Obi Wolshko. Tonight, we switch gears just a little, taking a closer look at the details of this new speech from the throne and delving into the themes emerging from this significant address. Stay tuned, because when we return, we are joined again by two of the country's biggest political personalities, Mrs. Loretta Butler Turner and Mr. Leslie Miller. A Closer Look begins right after this, and trust me, you don't want to miss any part of this very interesting conversation.
The fun this summer is at Margaritaville Beach Resort, Nassau. It's the perfect blend of sun, sea, and sand. Families can play at Fins Up Water Park or the Icons Entertainment Center, while couples can recharge at the St. Somewhere Spa or indulge at JWB Prime Steak and Seafood. When it's time to chill, our oceanfront rooms are the ultimate place to relax. Summer vacation is waiting at Margaritaville Beach Resort, Nassau.
Welcome back. I'm Arabina Apia, and you're watching A Closer Look. We're coming to you once again from the beautiful Margaritaville Beach Resort here in downtown Nassau. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Mrs. Loretta Butler Turner and Mr. Leslie Miller, who will serve as our special guest commentators today, helping me break down the emerging themes from the Davis administration's speech from the throne. Thank you so much for being here, sir and lady.
Thank you very much for having us again. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
To jump right in with you guys, because the speech from the throne took place October 4th. There was a lot of pomp and pageantry, as is per usual, but I think Bahamians were really tuned in to hear exactly what this administration's plans are for the remainder of their term. I'll start with you, Ms. Butler Turner. What were some of the things that really stood out to you from the speech from the throne?
Well, the first thing that I took notes. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the speech, but I took diligent notes as I listened to it being delivered. And I think the first thing that needs to be resolved and satisfied is the fact that we have lost a sitting senior cabinet minister. And I think that the speech from the throne spoke to the realignment of certain portfolios. So we've got to see how that's going to play out. The next thing that I heard from the speech from the throne was the strengthening of national security for citizens and for the country as a whole. And so that for me was very important. And when I looked at the national security interests, I also listened to the points on migration, illegal immigration, and the government basically being able to truly get a handle on that and create an environment where Bahamians would have greater opportunities for jobs.
You know, the plan that the government has laid out for the next 2.5 years of administration is one that I believe is achievable. It's going to take a lot of work and effort to implement those policies that they're hoping to bring fruition and bring assistance to the poor. I was concerned about the section that they have here on urban renewal, all those blighted areas that really needs assistance. I'm hoping that the government will implement parks and recreation facilities as well as building houses and apartments in those areas where it's very, very dearly needed to give the average Bahamian a chance at life. And I'm hoping that they can implement that fully.
Mr. Miller, you are very passionate about, policies that impact the average everyday Bahamian. I want to pivot just a little bit because I think that in the speech from the throne, there has been a lot of consideration given to vulnerable persons within our communities. We're talking about the elderly, we're talking about children, we're talking about the disabled, and that seems to be a very intentional move on the part of the Davis administration. Can you weigh in?
Yes.
Listen, I am saying that we formed the Bahamas Light Industries Council in 1983, okay, with the view of having Bahamians own their industries. And by partnering with the tourism industry and the Ministry of Tourism to see to it, first of all, that these people don't bring in all of these goods duty-free. Mattress factory, paint, bleach, everything that we went for. The first time we got concession was under the Honorable Paul Addy, God bless him, when I was elected to Parliament in 1987. There was no duty on paper. There was no duty on water. We changed the scope of that. We need to go further. We need the government to work hand in hand with us for getting their ministries, especially the Ministry of Works, their corporation, to patronize local businesses. It's the Bahamian people money that's going out of this country every day that we don't see again.
Well, we must retain more.
That's my argument.
No, and I would not disagree there. We must retain more of our money, and we must also be proud of what we produce. But you asked about the vulnerable. Yes. Let us speak to that, because in the speech from the throne, from my notes, they're strengthening the social support measures. They're creating an urban renewal authority. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the free internet and the green spaces. We know that we've seen that happening already in some of the parks.
Yes.
It is important that we continue to make sure that people who cannot afford, that we have smart cities, where people can access the internet. That's where information is at. They're restructuring the monthly assistance for the most vulnerable and increasing the benefits for the disabled. Now, increasing the benefits is important, but they also need to make it accessible, because a lot of disabled people do not even know how to access the funds. Mm-hmm. So that is important. It's no use increasing it and I don't know how to get it.
You have no accessibility.
All right. So I think that is going to have to be a huge part of that. We cannot leave the most vulnerable behind. One of the mantras of the PLP from Sir Lyndon and Sir Milo and A.D. Hanna was to wipe every tear from every eye. And of course, that was the mantra of our late fallen brother, O.B. Wilshcombe. So until we impact the most vulnerable and wipe those tears from their eyes, these are the things that are going to make a difference over the next 2.5 years.
Mr. Miller, you had mentioned, some of the things that you'd seen on social media happening with young people. The speech from the throne also speaks to a national youth service, something that really goes into inner city communities and tries to touch the lives of young people. What do you think, a successful program looks like, and how does that impact what the Bahamas
I believe it
like
starts in the home. Listen, all those fights I saw this week, there were several of them, with young girls beating young girls, okay? We have to look at the parents. They are responsible for bringing up kids in a certain manner, that they show love and respect for each other. Okay, it starts with the home. Now, many of these homes have young girls as mothers. And the fathers cannot be found to begin with. That's the first thing you have. We have some problems that we got to deal with. And we got to deal with them honestly.
From the government perspective, they seem to be taking what you're talking about a lot more seriously. They've moved this National Youth Service from the Ministry of Youth and moved it more into national security. How do you think that is going to impact
Well,
the
one
program?
of the things that I've noted, especially when we're doing national events now, as late as when we did the 50th anniversary celebrations, most of the uniformed branches, you would have noted that they had the youth arm. There were several great initiatives that I took away from this, because by expanding on the Rangers, we're beginning, I think, to instill the discipline so that we don't have as many of these things that the parents are not doing.
And they have some
There's greater
gangs too.
They're
going to focus on.
There's going to be there can be greater discipline through these feeder programs, if you will, for the uniformed branches. I thought something else that was really good to get more focus within our young people is the junior local government program. You see, a lot of people do not understand first how government operates. They don't understand how budgets are made. And so if we can start getting our family islanders, especially where there is local government, to start understanding how things happen within their communities, people begin to take greater ownership for it. I think a part of the challenge we have with our social problems is, yes, we know there are the absentee parents. We know that there are challenges there, but we have very good students that come out of the public school system. And I believe that by national security taking the lead in these junior programs, I think that, you know, there is a potential to really shift the culture and the social problems that we're going through right now.
Let's talk a little bit about what needs to happen in the Family Islands. In the speech from the throne, the government seems to be taking a more focused approach on what needs to happen in the Family Islands. That's from Inagua in the south to Grand Bahama in the north. So what are your thoughts based on what was laid out in the speech from the throne? How do you think we really bring the other Family Islands along as we look to this sort of national development plan?
I think in most of the Family Islands now, where government is looking at putting up adequate airports, air service, better sea service. I think places like Inagua, you mentioned Inagua. Inagua is one of the best fishing grounds in our country. But we get very little fish out of Inagua and those surrounding areas. I think we need to put up some stations out there.
And Ragged Island.
Ragged Island, etc.
Yeah.
To accommodate young people who would be interested in fishing. That's a very, very lucrative business in this country. Very lucrative.
Mention of a Family Island infrastructure fund?
Yes, and it's going to be predicated on a PPP.
Yes.
So, you know, there again, you get the buy-in of ownership. It's not all government driven and it's not all government funded, which, you know, when we talk about the expansion of the economy, it is so important because whether it's the ownership of those partners or the people working for those partners, we begin to expand that economy. And a lot of times you find that Family Islanders come with instilled ethics. Mm-hmm. So we need to hone in on that and take advantage of that and expand our economy there.
Well, that's some really great insights being shared. I want to thank you so much. But we have more of a closer look right after this. You're watching A Closer Look, coming to you from the beautiful Margaritaville Beach Resort here in downtown Nassau. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome back to the show, Mrs. Loretta Butler Turner and Mr. Leslie Miller. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be here.
You mentioned the public-private partnerships and that push toward ownership. I know one of the things that I've been hearing in terms of what was in the speech from the throne was a little pushback regarding the food program that's being implemented for students. Persons are asking, why not use that program to also rope in NGOs, to also rope in, some public-private partnerships in order to make that specific program more sustainable. It's not the first time that we've heard about a school feeding program, but these sorts of initiatives tend to fizzle out after some time because they are costly. So what do you think about the possibility of partnership with NGOs on that sort of front?
I think social services, having had my stint in social services, there is an ongoing food program that social services does for the most vulnerable in the school already. I think they said they're going to start with a pilot program.
Yes.
Where it would be inclusive, all inclusive. I think it's a great undertaking, but the challenge I have with it is that, sometimes we as human beings, we take these things for granted. And, parents, if you're driving by schools in the morning, every car trunk or every person, you see these kids standing out there buying potato chips and sodas and things like that first thing in the morning. Their parents are giving them money, but they're not buying nutritious food. And so I think it's important that when we do it, that we're not just doing it and we're not wasting it either. Because there will be people that will say they don't even want this food. Believe you me, in the school system, there are some kids, we have had to use a coupon system for children that need to be fed because they don't want to be seen as the poor child that the lunch is coming to school for.
You mentioned the sort of need for healthy food options, and that's just not obviously for children. I know in the speech from the throne there was mention of phase 2 of the National Health Insurance Plan. What are your thoughts? There seems to be a push toward actually trying to get us as a collective to take our health more seriously and really to have access to the kind of health care that we need.
But Dr. Michael Darville, I must give him credit, and the Prime Minister, it is not just called the Ministry of Health anymore. It's called the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Wellness is every bit a part of the prevention for health. I must commend the PLP in that they have always been at the forefront, whether it was through national insurance or trying to implement, this healthcare system. It's very expensive. It is very expensive. But in order for it to be effective, it goes hand in hand with good health and good choices. Because illnesses are, in many instances, because of the choices we make.
I believe once the government cleared the deck on what has transpired with some of the NGOs over the last 5 years with the funding and everything else that Bahamian people complain so much about, they would probably implement a new plan to assist those kids with getting lunch and breakfast in those schools, the government schools, that is very, very needed. I think with regard to the healthcare system, we tried to introduce the healthcare back in 2002. The doctors went against it. 2005 was when we really put a lot of emphasis on it. That didn't work. But that plan is so necessary today because people are so financially strapped. Many Bahamians die because they don't have access to the proper health care. It's very, very, it's a very good thing for the government to implement that to fully now.
I can tell you the amount of people that would send sponsor sheets to me.
Yes.
But have no idea. And many of them, having contributed to NIB, have not even enlisted themselves in NHI.
That's true.
And the reality is, I cannot always blame the population and the citizens. Government does these things, but they do not make them, they do not publish it enough.
People are not aware of them.
And do you know that once you are in NHI, you can get your prescription drugs free of charge. You can get certain tests done regularly. Yes. You can get all of these different preventative measures done before a catastrophic event happens in your life. You also have the management of a doctor, an assigned doctor. But Bahamians generally, if you do not spoon feed them this information, they do not take advantage of it.
Have to take advantage.
You have to take advantage of it. So when you say, oh, you know, I'm paying taxes, I'm doing this, there are things that you can get back from the government that you don't have to be paying for.
But we need more doctors to get involved in the program to make it more accessible for the average Bahamian when the crisis comes. And I would wish them to step to the plate and give back to the Bahamian people.
I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, because we've been breaking down specific elements of the speech from the throne, but I think we have not necessarily spoken about the process. Mrs. Butler Turner, you alluded to it early on when you were talking about what happens now that we have lost Mr. Wilshcombe, and we spoke about it last time you were here in terms of the realignment of cabinet. Let's talk about the processes. Having heard now the speech from the throne, having gone through that entire process Wednesday past, can we talk about why the prorogation was really a necessary step?
Well, you know, that speech from the throne is a roadmap, if you will. So from here on, within 2 weeks, you will see something carried in Parliament called debating the speech from the throne. And every portfolio minister or junior minister, you will probably see them extract from this speech the parts that fall within their purview and expand upon it. That's when we'll get the meat, the flesh of what these programs are supposed to be doing. It will then be debated in its entirety. That is where I think we lose our people. A lot of people don't understand the importance of the debates that take place in Parliament. They need to tune in, they need to listen, they need to understand how does the government hope to achieve these objectives.
Do you agree? Do you agree that we sort of lose the Bahamian public during the debate section? And how do we get more Bahamians involved and watching so that they are able to take advantage of some of the things that we've been talking about today?
The problem with the debates in many instances, it becomes so repetitious. When one person say the same thing over and repeatedly, each minister and junior ministers, as she alluded to, has responsibility to articulate what they're going to do over the next 2.5 years in their respective ministries. I think it's going to be important to see who the Prime Minister gives Mr. Obi's portfolio, Obi Wilshcombe portfolio to, who can step to the plate and really inject energy into that area and get it done. You know, we have so much work to do in this country over the next 2.5 years in stabilizing the economy and uplifting those who are in dire straits. Bringing down the cost of energy is the most important thing. I think what the government needs to do right away to bring down the cost of energy, you must focus on Clifton Pier. If you get Clifton right, you get New Providence right. You have to go ahead and, like the Prime Minister said, look at getting land to go with the solar everywhere we can in New Providence. I think it starts again with the government roofs, all those buildings we have, solarize the buildings. Bring the cost of energy down, because you know the government spends more money.
I know that energy reform is definitely one of the focal areas from the speech from the throne. But I'm wondering now, I guess, as we wrap up, what are you guys most excited about in terms of the way forward based on the speech? What are you most excited about? We'll start with you, Ms. Butler Turner.
I would say that not just excited, but important. And I think maybe Mr. Miller and I agree on this, being able to definitely affect those persons that are experiencing the highest hardship at this point. Unless we can actually tangibly touch those lives, I believe that the government will not have fulfilled its mandate in being able to reach those persons who make up, in general, the masses. That is going to be very, very important. And so I see a culmination of many aspects where that can happen, whether it's through food security and the cost of living, whether it's through energy reduction and the cost of living. It all boils down to bringing the cost of living within reason for everyone, for our citizens. I think that's going to be a huge part.
I think that's something you would definitely agree
My
with.
main concern would be the full implementation of the policies, not the rhetoric, but the minister who's going to go there and get it done, who's going to have a team to produce for the Bahamian people, who's going to make a definitive difference in their lives. Like the madam said, especially in the poor, who are so vulnerable now more than ever, that you're going to uplift them and put them on a level that they can live a life that is commensurate with being a Bahamian.
To your point, that there has been an injection of young energy into the cabinet. Don't you think that we're talking about people like Pia and Joe
That's
Beth
fine.
and
You want
Clay.
implementation. It's good
And
to have
Clay.
anybody that you want it done. That's what I'm saying.
Do you
Get the results.
Do you have confidence that these people?
I believe they have the wherewithal to do so. Yes, I think Jomo Campbell is a good man in agriculture and marine resources. Pia Globe has done a wonderful job as a junior minister. I'm sure she's going to repeat that and become well, she's already done a wonderful job. That's going to continue, but we need all hands on deck. You can't have any loafers there, even in the corporations. People got to go and do their job. You were elected to work for and on behalf of the Bahamian people. Fail you to do so, you will not be there in 2.5 years. Simple as that. Do your job.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. This has been a very spirited conversation. There's a lot, obviously, to go through. The speech from the throne is very dense, but I'm hoping, as you guys are hoping, that Bahamians are really paying attention and are prepared to take advantage of the benefits that are being laid out for them. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
for
you
being
very
here.
much.
When we
Very
return,
simple.
we have more from A Closer Look after this. Welcome back. While the pomp and pageantry of last week's opening of Parliament was indeed a spectacle to behold, the Davis administration's speech from the throne demonstrates precisely the quality of focus that shows that they want to go beyond the pomp and pageantry of a new session of Parliament. What is clear is that this administration is moving with the Bahamian people in mind. We hope you've enjoyed our coverage of the reopening of Parliament, and we know that you, like us here at A Closer Look, will be watching to ensure that the government lives up to the expectations that it has set for itself. Together, we'll watch, question, and make informed decisions about the impact of the future of our beloved Bahamas. Till next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Aravana Apia. Good night, everyone.